Hi, and welcome back to the Toronto International Film Festival. Thanks for joining us for one of our Q&A sessions with the Directors of Films and Shortcuts Program 3 here at TIFF. My name is Jason Anderson, and I'm the programmer here at Shortcuts. And I'm very excited to be joined by the directors of 4 films we have in the program. We're thrilled to have them all. And first of all, I'd like each of them to introduce themselves and say which films they're here with. I'll start with Tim.
Hi, my name is Tim Myles, and I am the writer-director of Little Bird.
Great, thanks. And working from my clockwise, Madeleine.
Hi, I'm Madeleine Gottlieb, and I'm the writer and director of You and Me Before and After.
Terrific, thanks. And also Nash.
Hi, my name's Nash Edgerton, and I'm the writer-director of Shark.
Great, thank you. And Nesaru.
Hi, I'm Nesaru, Tchaas, and I'm the writer and director of Some Still Surf.
Great. Thanks, everyone. And again, we're thrilled to have you here. Very thrilled to be able to share your films with the TIFF audience because they're also special to us and also different, but I think all equally strong and distinctive. And first of all, I just love to hear from everyone just to about the beginnings of the films and kind of what got you started and what kind of, I guess, what compelled you to tell these stories. Although funnily enough, I think I'll start with Nash because it's actually kind of the sort of the beginning and an ending, I guess, to a series of shorts you've been making for quite some time. But we're really so thrilled to have Shark here too.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, look, I've been making short films for a long time. I love the format of short films, and as you mentioned, Shark is a sequel to 2 other films I made, one called Spider and another one called Bear. And when I made Spider in 2007, I think it was, it had a life much bigger than I ever expected it would. And then I just wanted to see, could I make another film? I'd never seen a sequel to a short film, and I was curious to see what, and people would always ask me, what happened to them after, the events of Spider. And so I wanted to see, could I make a short film that worked on its own, but also worked as a companion piece to Spider. And then, I had this idea to continue it further, and that's where Shark came from.
And it is so you finished the trilogy. Yet it's of course maybe it's a quadrilogy. I think the term is, who knows?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, it depends if another idea comes to mind. I try to leave each one of them a little bit open for more.
It's when he's maybe he'll make his way out of this one. It's hard to tell.
Yeah.
So, that's great. And actually, yeah, and sticking with the with our guest from Australia, we'll go to Madeleine.
Hi. Yeah. I mean, I this is my 4th short film, and the first couple were definitely experiments in how much I could imitate other people's work without anybody fully picking up on it. But as I've gone on, I've realized that I like to make things that are quite personal, and this is definitely my most personal film yet. And it started as a conversation that I semi-transcribed between my sister and I about a sort of imagined future for us, and then it just sort of ballooned from there. And it's an apology really to my sister because I wasn't the best growing up. I have 2 younger sisters, and 3 girls in a house is fraught. So this film is sort of like a comedic, heartfelt apology to her for not always being there the way that I definitely should have.
I hope it's received as intended too.
Oh, she cried, but I don't know whether they were good or bad tears yet. So we're trying to figure that out.
Oh, and maybe I was just thinking that we would certainly another really personal film that we really love is Little Bird, and maybe Tim could talk about the beginnings of this film.
Yeah. Hi. My Little Bird is a semi-autobiographical story. I lost my mom back in 2013. She passed away from polycystic kidney disease. It was a long fight, long battle my whole life. Shortly after she passed away, I'm originally from Newfoundland, and shortly after she passed away, like, I kind of packed everything up and moved to Toronto to be an actor. And I felt that I really never got to fully mourn that loss, or like I kind of like started a whole new life. So it was very pushed back, I think. And I would only get glimpses of it when I would go home for Christmas and things like that. So when I wrote Little Bird, it was kind of like a love letter to her, to that time of my life. And there's this line in the film from that one of the characters, her name is Sherry Miracle, Indigenous actress. She says, you know, don't bear the weight of grief alone. Or the funny thing about grief is you don't have to bear it alone. Don't bear it alone. So knowing that when I was here and I felt alone, I felt like I was starting a whole new life, a whole new like second puberty, really. That I found like I found a new, like not a new family, but I mean I found a family within friends here and family back home, and so yeah, it was a love letter to her, a love letter to the people who helped me get through losing her, and also a love letter to my Indigenous heritage. I'm Mi'kmaq from Moapakek First Nations back home in Newfoundland.
That's great. Thank you. And it's such a touching film and funny too, which is nice to have a combination of those. And Nesaru's film and Some Still Search, which I think is just such an extraordinary film. So I'm so pleased to have it here. And I'd love to hear how this began for you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it began, I guess, starting initially with my experience living in India. I was living there for a good while, several years, and when I came back, I'm originally from Oakland and San Francisco, and when I came back, just seeing the changes that were going on in the Bay Area as gentrification was, overhauling a lot of the culture and things that I think made the Bay Area what it was. And I wanted to do a project on that initially. And as I was doing research for that, I came across this article that told the story of this group of immigrants that were living in the basement of this laundromat. And it was sort of a secretive life that everyone there was living. And it was discovered by a group of firemen as they were doing some kind of like a hazard check in the building. And it was described as a death trap. And the building, the room had no windows in it, and people were living, in these sort of partitioned off spaces. And I wanted to initially, was just fascinated by that and wanted to investigate and understand what drives a person to, to live in those kind of extreme circumstances. And that sort of led to interviewing immigrant families in the areas that, I grew up in Oakland and San Francisco. And out of that jumped the story of Some Soul Search. And it was clear to me that, the story that I wanted to tell was about family separation and really stemming from all of the stories that I was hearing from immigrant families who were facing, the things that resulted from the ICE operations and actions that were happening in the Bay Area.
Well, thank you. I mean, it's such a powerful work. It's heartbreaking. So I'm really, again, thank you for bringing it to us. And yeah, this is, all these films are journeys in their respective ways. And I'd love to hear more about the sort of the process of really just how they got made. And certainly one thing I think is a common thread here is amazing performances that you are all able to get from people on screen, and sometimes yourselves too. So kudos to that as well. But maybe starting with Madeleine, actually, just because I think this is such a rich and sharp two-hander kind of piece, and you just have two terrific performers who just carry it off with such precision. I mean, what was it like, I guess, sort of casting and sort of finding, these two really great people you have, which I think are familiar to many viewers as well.
I was incredibly lucky that Yael and Emily came on board. I think Nash has also worked with Emily before and can attest to how extraordinary she is.
Yeah, she's amazing.
She's just amazing. They both are. And yeah, I mean, that's always the case when it's like a very dialogue heavy, confined space sort of story you're trying to tell, you really, really relying on the strength of those performances. So I knew that the film would sort of, you know, survive or fall on the quality of those actors. And I knew that Yael had a similar Jewish Hungarian Holocaust survivor background to what I have, and there's a pretty controversial Holocaust joke in the film, and the character's Jewish heritage is something that's quite important to me and definitely plays into their sense of humor. And so it was also important to me that I worked with somebody who could understand, at least one person who could understand that. And so I wrote to her and was lucky enough when, you know, was just thrilled when she said yes. And Emily, I sort of knew peripherally, and we have this sort of friendship through her partner, Tom, who I've worked with. And they were incredible. Like, they just sparred perfectly. They got along instantly. They had a sisterly rapport without me having to do very much. I mean, they say that half the work, or 90% of the work of directing is just casting, and particularly with this, I just could not agree more.
And was it, did they kind of really lock in, especially once you got in the room and they got the hopefully fake tattoos, not real ones, but maybe they did go all the way to the real tattoos.
Fake tattoos, but some poor pigskins bore the brunt of those for the close-ups. Oh yeah, they locked in. Like a few of the lines that are in there were just them riffing, which was pretty amazing. And one of the coolest things was we shot it in my parents' house, so it was personal on multiple levels. But my sister, who Emily was playing, dropped in on one of the days, and when they met each other, it was so bizarre because Emily had just absolutely nailed her without having ever met her. And everybody on set just had this moment where they were like, I won't swear. What is happening? So yeah, I mean, just between the two of them, but also in terms of locking into who my sister is, and Yael in some ways into who I am, was quite confronting and special, really.
It is. I mean, they just create such amazing energy. It's so, yeah, it's such a enjoyable in its own, you know, kind of acerbic way. There's so much there. It's funny. It's dangerous. Just thinking about kind of like, I mean, just started drawing connection with Little Bird. You really are this. I mean, it's a family. It's a, you know, a kind of reflection, quite close of experiencing it. At the same time, it's, you know, there are departures, I'm sure too. Well, so I wanted to talk to Tim about the experience of kind of, I guess, you know, I mean, both having your director's hat. And sort of go, you know, kind of shepherding people through this experience, but also you yourself kind of, you know, tapping, you know, your own experience to be in the film and to play this story.
Yeah, I mean, I was very nervous in the beginning because I thought, you know, I was wearing too many hats, and sometimes, you know, when you're in the zone as a director, when you are kind of also helping produce the film, because again, you know, shorts are, you're kind of wearing a producer hat as well. But I think, you know, when we got up to shoot, we shot on the Saugeen Shores, near Saugeen First Nation. It's in Ontario. And I met with some of the elders from the reserve on Saugeen. And I just kind of sat and spoke with them about, you know, my experience and with my mom and losing her and everything. And my acting coach came up with me, and I worked really closely with her, Sophie Rooney. And that whole weekend was just kind of the elders showing me the town, my acting coach and I, like, going through the script, and me talking about, you know, what that grief was, or what I thought about losing my mom, or where I was at. And I was really scared that it wouldn't come. And then when I got there, it really started to, like, it just flowed naturally. Also, you know, like I said before, it felt like I was planning for a feature. Like, we've been planning it. So my producer, Caitlin Russell, we've been planning it for so long that the whole shoot just ran so smoothly. And I was able to kind of like step back, and my assistant director, Lauren Andrews, she's also a director, and I've worked on her projects before. She knows like how to get me there, or when I know I'm happy with a role, because I didn't have time to, watch every take back. I just kind of did 3 and then hope for the best. And then we cast Lisa Nason, who plays my sister in the film. She's a Mi'kmaq actress from the East Coast, from Nova Scotia. She plays my sister in the film. And then Sherry Miracle, who's a Mohawk actress here in Ontario, very well-respected actress. She agreed to come on, and I was so thankful, because she's a powerhouse. And that scene of her and I, like outside of the diner, is just so special to me. We had a really emotional morning. I gave the actresses gifts, and Sherry just shared with me this like really special story, and it was just all very beautiful, and like it was just meant to be. So those actors, like they brought out the performance in me as well. Like everybody just was amazing. I'm thankful.
Oh, that's great. And really, I mean, all that feeling really just kind of shines through in the film so much. It's great to see. And again, it's sort of extraordinary performances, and just going to Some Still Search, because I mean, first time actors that you've really kind of brought, kind of brought incredible things from them, and again, such deep feelings. So I just love to hear from Nesaru about the process of finding the people for the film, and kind of guiding them through this experience. But I'm sure also, protecting them in this experience too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, it was the casting part of this film was definitely the hardest part. I think altogether it was a challenging film to make for a number of reasons, but the casting was definitely, the longest part of, and the most challenging part of making the film. It was really core to my idea for the identity of this film to, use real people, to cast real people in the film. And that was something, discussion I had a lot initially that made it challenging to get the film produced, was that, the majority of the producers that I was talking to discouraged me from working with real people, in particular because of the fact that a lot of, the people acting in the film are in real ways undergoing, a crises in their own lives. So it made, that whole process a lot less predictable in terms of, just being able to rely on everyone consistently being there and making sure that we could all be prepared. But ultimately, I think that, it lends a lot to the materiality of the film. There's something that's there that I think is distinct from, the kinds of performances that you would get in working with trained actors. And I think it's coming from a very different place. The origin of the performances is really rooted in people's experiences of immigration, and drawing on that. So a lot of the work that I was doing with the actors was, getting them firstly to kind of trust that the experiences that they had were enough to bring to bear on their performances, and getting them to trust that and to step into that, and then finding people who were willing to take that journey in terms of the kind of vulnerability that they'd have to go through in kind of digging into their own stories for their performances in the film.
And that's something so striking, is just how quiet and I mean, a lot of the performance is just so subtle. It's not like you're not sort of they're not forcing them into sort of big grandstanding kind of moments. So much of it is just so quiet and so much more powerful for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I worked with my cinematographer Anthony a lot leading up to it, to get him comfortable with being around the actors. I'm definitely a believer that what's going on behind the camera influences what's in front of the camera. There's that osmosis that's always happening between both sides of the camera. So I wanted him to get comfortable with being around the actors and vice versa, and allow that thing that you're talking about, I think, to emerge naturally, which is that a sense of just kind of being in the space with the actors and kind of just absorbing their presence.
And it works so well. And I guess sort of shifting gears, I mean, Shark is just this, I guess I was going to call it a beast of a film, but I should stop with the puns. But it really is. I mean, again, sort of thinking about this film and certainly in relation to its predecessors, it just is, it's kind of this, it's sort of a go big or go home. And it feels, and maybe also just because you have, for Jack, your sort of on-screen alter ego, this incredible foil, partner in crime kind of figure, played by Rose Byrne, who just, I mean, the energy she brings to this is really something else. I mean, what was it like, sort of? I mean, when you first kind of had the idea for Shark, I mean, did she come into the picture fairly early? I mean, did you always sort of think that it was time for Jack to get someone who could really kind of, match his prankster, his flair for outrage?
I think the first time, when we had the first draft of it, it was sort of continuing Jack dating girls that misunderstood him, and then David, Micho, and I, we were talking about what else we could do, and we started realizing both of us have partners that understand us and challenge us, and obviously the prankster in Jack is based on me. Not that I've taken pranks as far as Jack does, but a lot of them, for example, in the film, there's a scene at the dentist. I did that to a dentist in LA. There's a wedding prank that my wife did to me at our wedding. There's a prank with a blender that Sophie does in the film that David's partner, Mira, who was the girl in Spider, did to him. And so there were so many personal things that kind of bled into the film. And so David and I had this idea that maybe it's going to be better if Jack has met his match. He meets someone who understands him, understands his sense of humor, and really challenges him. And so then, in terms of casting it, Rose and I have been friends for over 20 years. She was in one of my first short films, and I knew I knew what her sense of humor was like. Obviously she's an amazing actress, and I never intended on being in Spider originally. I made it for so little money, and I needed to have prosthetics made for the needle in the eye effect. And the special effects makeup guys who could do that for me were only available a few months earlier. And so to cast an actor at that point that I wasn't paying, that I could guarantee would show up on the day of the shoot, it was their suggestion that I play Jack. And, I'm glad for the challenge of it, but directing and acting at the same time is very difficult because your brain is splitting into two places. You're trying to be real in the scene, but you're also trying to think of how you're going to complete the day. And so you're trying to stop yourself from being a director while acting, so that you are present in the scene with the other actors. But having someone like Rose, who I was friends with, I was comfortable with, I knew was an amazing actor, and that I had a great rapport with already, just made it so much more fun to do, and I think made me better in the film for it.
And I guess you probably need that too. I mean, given I'm sure the challenge of the finale of actually having being out and about is tough enough, and then to have the kind of chaos, the gruesome chaos that ensues. I mean, was it more fun, or just very finicky, or was it sort of it's always that sort of thing seems really complex.
Look, I've never shot in that kind of location on a tropical island. It was so amazing. We had such a tiny crew, like most short films. And because of the nature of being on a boat, only a certain number of us could be there anyway. So it felt just the same as making any other short film I've made, in that it was just a small core group of people doing it. We just had this amazing location. So it felt like we weren't really working while doing it. Shark is so much bigger than the other two shorts. I really wanted to see how far I could expand the world. Like the other two are very much two-handers, and then suddenly this had an ensemble of people, which as a director is challenging at the best of times, and then being in the center of it as well was quite chaotic. But I always have another friend there who's a filmmaker. Just in the case of this, my brother came for the days we shot in the Sydney stuff, and then David Michaud came when we were doing the island stuff. Just to have someone who I trust, who can just, so I don't have to look at every take. And I do a similar thing for my brother when he's acting and directing, and it's just nice to have someone there who will tell you when you're okay and when you're not okay.
Well, it's great, and we're so happy to have the film here. It's been great. We certainly had a film from Mira a couple of years ago, and we just loved it.
Oh yeah, she's such a talented filmmaker.
Oh yeah.
Too.
So it's great, and all the films are so terrific. So I'm really, really happy to get the chance to talk to you all. I wish I could talk longer, but we're out of time. But I just want to thank you all for being here and for sharing the films and for getting these things done, given the kind of circumstances we've all been in for the last year and a half. So it really is hugely appreciated. So thanks again. Thanks to the viewers for being here too.
Thank
Thanks for
you.
having us.
Thank you.